Quranic Laws, Qawaneen. By G.A. Parwez. Translated by Dr. Abdul Wadud. Chapter 2 Government Agencies. Instructions for Government Employees. Although every law and code of an Islamic state shall be applicable to the government officials like the other individuals of society, but, in view of their special responsibilities, they shall have to be more circumspect in some particular aspects. For example, 1. Allah's law of requital is cognizant not only of the human deeds that are manifest, but also of those which are concealed, such as an idea that flashes across one's mind or even the impurity of one's glances. Therefore, in the performance of their duty, if they commit any carelessness, negligence, irresponsibility or breach of trust, but somehow escape the consequences of the law, yet they must remember that they cannot escape the grip of Allah's law of requital. Allah's law of requital is such that, 40:19,
يعلم خائنة الأعين وما تخفي الصدور.
He knows the perfidy of the eye and that which the bosoms hide. 2. In each affair they shall have to ensure that they do not take a decision repugnant to Quranic teachings, because to enjoin what is right according to the divine laws and to forbid what is wrong is their basic responsibility. 22:41. Their decisions should not only fulfill the demands of justice but also that of ihsan. Thus it is said, 458.
وإذا حكمتم بين الناس أن تحكموا بالعدل.
Whenever you decide the disputed affairs of the people, always do it with justice. At yet another place it is said, 1690.
إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان.
Indeed, Allah commands you to do justice and make good the deficiencies of others. Justice means that every individual in a human society gets what is his due, and ihsan means making up the abatements of the individuals to restore the disturbed balance in the society. Adl and ihsan are the two basic terms of the Quran which can be given a practical shape by pondering over the day-to-day affairs. For example, a thief shall be punished according to law, this shall be a matter of justice. But the loss of one whose belongings have been stolen is not compensated by this act. The Adl and ihsan demand that the loss of the victim should also be compensated. 3. You yourself must practice what you say to others. 61:2-3.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا لم تقولون ما لا تفعلون كبر مقتا عند الله أن تقولوا ما لا تفعلون.
O you who believe! You ought to present a practical proof of your belief in the divine commands by your own acts. You should never say to others what you do not do yourself. It is grievously odious in the sight of Allah that you say what you do not do. Harmony in what you say and what you do is the visible proof of what you profess. For all that belongs to the state, even the secrets of the state, are a trust with you. Do not betray this trust. 8:27.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تخونوا الله والرسول وتخونوا أماناتكم وأنتم تعلمون.
O you who believe! It is incumbent on you that you do not betray the trust placed in your hands by the divine system, Allah and the Rasul, nor in the performance of the duties entrusted to you. You know what shall be the result of it. 5. Render back your trusts to whom they are due and fill up the vacancies in the government service on their merit. Both these concepts are present in the verse, 458.
إن الله يأمركم أن تؤدوا الأمانات إلى أهلها. 6.
Never let people's confidence, trust, in you be shattered. Let the trustee faithfully discharge his trust. 283.
فإن أمن بعضكم بعضا فليؤدي الذي أؤتمن أمانته.
If one of you places a thing in trust with another, let the trustee, faithfully, discharge his trust. Basically, this command relates to properties entrusted to others, but as a matter of principle this is applicable to all kinds of trusts. It means that no matter what is placed in your trust, you should always honor the trust reposed in you. 7. Do not take part in any type of intrigue and always stay conscious that, 35:43,
ولا يحيق المكر السيء إلا بأهله.
The evil plan besets none save its own authors. 8. You should cooperate with one another in constructive matters. Cooperate with each other in matters of benefit to humanity and in matters consistent with the divine laws. 5:2.
وتعاونوا على البر والتقوى.
Is the divine commandment, and be with those who are veracious, true to their commitments. 9:119.
وكونوا مع الصادقين.
Be with those who are true, in words and deed, is an emphatic commandment. 9. If one finds that another officer is handing out a wrong decision on account of his being ill-informed, he should convey to him correct information. This act shall be called shafa'ati hasana, commendable intercession. 485.
من يشفع شفاعة حسنة يكن له نصيب منها ومن يشفع شفاعة سيئة يكن له كفل منها وكان الله على كل شيء مقيتا.
If somebody stands in support of another person in a matter just and equitable, commendable intercession, he shall also share pleasant results. On the contrary, if one helps another person in matters of injustice and transgression, called evil intercession, he shall share its disastrous consequences. They shall neither take the side of those who are dishonest and betray the trust. 105.
ولا تكن للخائنين خصيما.
So be not used as an advocate by those who betray the trust, and never indulge in bribery, is Allah's directive. The following verse is a comprehensive guide on the matter. 188.
ولا تأكلوا أموالكم بينكم بالباطل وتدلوا بها إلى الحكام لتأكلوا فريقا من أموال الناس بالإثم وأنتم تعلمون.
Do not eat up your property among yourselves by foul means, nor use it as a bait for the judges, with the intent that you may eat up wrongfully a part of other people's property, although you know its results. 10. Investigate all disputed matters yourself, never rely on hearsays. 1736.
ولا تقف ما ليس لك به علم إن السمع والبصر والفؤاد كل أولئك كان عنه مسؤولا.
And pursue not that of which you have no knowledge, that is, of which you have not made an investigation or personal inquiry, collecting relevant information, employing your faculties of hearing and seeing, and then make the knowledge thus obtained the basis of your decisions, so as to reach the correct conclusion. If a single link of this chain is missing, your inquiry shall remain defective. Think what a great responsibility lies upon you, because Allah has endowed you with the power of discretion and determination. He has not made you a constrained machine. For the use of your discretion He has bestowed on you the mediums of knowledge and ascertainment. The one who does not make use of them, tries to escape from his responsibility. 11. Achieve prevention of evil with the beauty and proportion of your deeds. The principle is, 2396.
ادفع بالتي هي أحسن السيئة.
Repel evil with that which is best. 12. If one does wrong by mistake and there is a possibility of his correction, he ought to be pardoned. Thus it is said, 654.
أنه من عمل منكم سوءا بجهالة ثم تاب من بعده وأصلح فأنه غفور رحيم.
If there is an omission or negligence on somebody's part, thereafter he repents and makes amends in future, he ought to be given protection and forgiveness by the organization of the state. If anybody's guilt demands the fulfillment of justice, the punishment should not exceed his crime. In this respect the principle is, 4240.
وجزاء سيئة سيئة مثلها.
The recompense of an evil is punishment equal thereto. 13. They should exercise self-control, maintain their composure, and not get enraged easily. 133.
والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس.
To control tempers and to forgive others has been called trait of the believers. Self-restraint also implies talking in low and dulcet tones. 3119.
واقصد في مشيك واغضض من صوتك.
Soft talking in moderation and walk, gait, are the symbols of trustworthiness and solemnity. During discussions they should not try to compel others to accept their version on the basis of their awe-inspiring presence as an officer, but, 16125.
وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن.
Argue with them in ways that are best and most gracious. 14. They should always fulfill their promise. 1734.
وأوفوا بالعهد إن العهد كان مسؤولا.
And fulfill every commitment, for every commitment will be inquired into on the day of reckoning. 15. They should not throw their responsibility on others. The principle is, 5338.
ألا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى.
No bearer of burdens shall bear the burden of another. Everybody shall bear his own burden. 16. They should never wish to be praised for what they do not do. That is, be not like those who like flattery and are thus the most dangerous enemies. The way of hypocrites is described as 3187.
ويحبون أن يحمدوا بما لم يفعلوا.
They desire to be praised for what they do not do. Chapter 3 Justice 1. To establish the rule of justice is a basic responsibility of an Islamic state. The demand for justice prevails in all walks of life, but here we shall talk only about the judicial justice, that which pertains to the domain of law. The Quran also provides the required guidance for justice dispensing agencies, that is, the courts of law. It is necessary to understand one basic principle about justice. According to the common concept of justice in the world, the duty of a law court is to decide the disputed affairs according to the code of law that is prevalent, therefore a decision made accordingly shall be considered as based on justice. But, if the law itself is not based on justice, then the decision based on it can never be considered just. Thus the principle laid down by the Quran is that the law of the land should also be based on justice. In this respect the Quran does not indulge in a philosophical debate as to what is meant by law on the basis of justice and what is the definition of justice. It addresses the Islamic sovereign state decisively as follows, 544.
ومن لم يحكم بما أنزل الله فأولئك هم الكافرون.
If any do fail to judge by what Allah has revealed, they are the infidels. It means that where the rule is based on Quranic laws, it shall be an Islamic government, and if it is not based on Quranic law, it shall be a government of non-believers. Only that law shall be considered as based on truth which conforms to the Book of Allah, any law contrary to it shall be based on zulm, injustice. Thus the judges are addressed as follows, 7159.
يهدون بالحق وبه يعدلون.
They guide people towards the truth, the Quran, and dispense justice in accordance with what it dictates. The real justice, in fact, is the justice based on truth. If the law is not based on truth, then any judgment according to this law cannot be considered as meeting the requirements of justice. Truth is, in fact, another name for the Book of Allah. The same is the difference between an Islamic state and a secular state. In Surah Sad it is said, 38:26.
يا داود إنا جعلناك خليفة في الأرض فاحكم بين الناس بالحق ولا تتبع الهوى فيضلك عن سبيل الله.
O David! We did indeed give you the rule on the earth, so decide between men in truth, and do not follow the lust of their hearts, for they will mislead you from the path of Allah. This makes clear two issues: firstly, that the law of the land ought to be based on truth, the Book of Allah; secondly, that the court of law should remain above its personal sentiments, that is, it should remain neutral. That is what is called a just decision. 2. For a system of justice the Quran has ordained, 458.
وإذا حكمتم بين الناس أن تحكموا بالعدل.
And when you decide between man and man, you must do so with justice. Even when you make peace between parties, do so with justice. 49:9. In Surah Al-Hujurat it is ordained that if two factions of Muslims develop a dispute, and wage war against each other,
فأصلحوا بينهما بالعدل.
Sort out their mutual conflict with justice. 3. Even enmity with a nation should not incline you to act unjustly. 5:8.
ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى.
Let not the enmity of others make you swerve from justice, be just, that is only nearer to taqwa, piety. 4. Not only the cases of Muslims, but the cases of non-Muslims also should be decided with justice. The Rasul was ordained even if the non-Muslims come to you for the judgment of their cases. 542.
فاحكم بينهم بالقسط.
Judge between them with equity. 5. The Rasul was told, we have sent this book to you with the truth. 548.
فاحكم بينهم بما أنزل الله ولا تتبع أهواءهم.
So judge between them as Allah has revealed and follow not their vain desires. 6. Al-Kitab, the code of divine laws, power to enforce this code and scales of justice are the basic ingredients of an Islamic government as stated earlier. The various aspects of the subject are thoroughly discussed in Surah Al-Hayd, 57:25.
لقد أرسلنا رسلنا بالبينات وأنزلنا معهم الكتاب والميزان ليقوم الناس بالقسط وأنزلنا الحديد فيه بأس شديد ومنافع للناس وليعلم الله من ينصره ورسله بالغيب إن الله قوي عزيز.
For this purpose Allah has so arranged that He sends His messengers to different people, nations, with clear, unambiguous arguments, and each one of the messengers brings with him a code of law. He establishes an order in accordance with this code wherein everybody's deeds produce their designated results and thus people adhere to the rule of justice and equity. For the stability and strength of such a society we have sent, along with the code of laws, steel, to provide the enforcing power, in which there is much of stiffness, strength, because power provided by, the strength of, this steel becomes instrumental in establishing an order based on justice and equity and providing protection to the oppressed. Therefore, instead of being harmful, it becomes greatly beneficial to mankind. The establishment of this order also brings into open those faithful and loyal persons who contribute towards achieving this goal, the establishment of the order, which takes practical shape through the efforts of Allah's messengers. Although the refulgent results of the establishment of this order have not, as yet become visible, these faithful and loyal people, on the strength of their conviction only, offer every type of personal sacrifice and thus establish the system ordained by Allah, wherein lies inherent power and sovereignty. 7. During the course of justice, do not make any distinction between relatives and non-relatives or between your people and those of the other factions, neither the status of rich and poor, nor even your personal benefits, should affect your judgment. The judgment must be based on justice, even if it goes against yourself. Thus it is ordained, 6:152.
فاعدلوا ولو كان ذا قرب.
When you say something, say it according to justice, even if the concerned person is your relative. Justice depends on evidence, and for evidence the Holy Quran has set up such a high standard the like of which you may not find elsewhere. Thus it is said, 435.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما فلا تتبعوا الهوى أن تعدلوا وإن تلووا أو تعرضوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا.
In order to establish this system in which you find pleasures of the present life as well as of the future, the basic condition for justice is that you stand as a witness, neither from the plaintiff nor defendant, but present your own evidence in all truth and equity, even if it goes against yourself or your parents or your other relatives. Do not differentiate between rich and poor in this respect, for Allah can best protect both, so much so that you must do justice even to your enemy. 5:8. Do not favor anyone after swerving from what is just, as Allah Almighty Himself takes care of them. Keep it in your mind that your sentiments may not come in the way of justice. Do not talk in a crooked manner, nor try to avoid being a witness. Remember that Allah's law of requital is well acquainted with what you do. He knows the inclination of your mind as well as your sentiments. 8. As said earlier, Allah ordains both adl and ihsan, 7:20, 1690. To punish the criminal for his crime is adl, justice, and making good the loss of the claimant is ihsan. This is the basic responsibility of an Islamic state. Basic orders about the enforcement of justice. 1. To punish the criminal according to law is the duty of the government. This is called qisas. In this lies the secret of the life of people. There shall be no distinction between small or big. Thus it is said, 278.
أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم القصاص في القتل الحر بالحر والعبد بالعبد والأنثى بالأنثى فمن عفي له من أخيه شيء فاتباع بالمعروف وأداء إليه بإحسان ذلك تخفيف من ربكم ورحمة فمن اعتدى بعد ذلك فله عذاب أليم.
O you who believe! As regards punishment, it has been made incumbent upon you that the murderer must be punished. It means that the crime should be considered as a crime against society or against the system itself and not against the victim only. Thus, while giving punishment, the basic principles of justice and equality must be kept in mind, which means that there should be no distinction between big and small. It is not a question of the position of the murderer or the murdered, the real question is the enforcement of justice according to which every human life is of equal value. For example, if the murderer is a free man, he alone shall be punished for his crime. Likewise, if she is a woman, she shall not be spared because of her sex. She will have to undergo punishment. Murder can be of two types, murder by intent, or murder by mistake. In the case of willful murder, the punishment is death, not ransom money, or any other punishment proportionate to the nature of the crime, that is anything less than the capital punishment, 493. But the punishment should not exceed the nature of the crime, 4240, 1733. But if it is not a willful murder but a murder by mistake, the punishment according to verse 492 is ransom money, blood money. But if a remission is made by the heirs of the slain out of their own goodwill, they are allowed to do so. 1733. In such a case it is incumbent on the murderer to abide by what has been settled and pay it in a commendable manner. In determining the punishment of murder by mistake, Allah has provided facility for relaxation, so that the potentialities of all of you may keep developing. But if anybody transgresses after the settlement has taken place, he shall be punished heavily. Thus it is clear that a compromise can take place only in case of unintentional murder, not in willful murder. In willful murder the murderer shall be punished. This is the law of Qisas about which it has been ordained. 179.
ولكم في القصاص حياة يا أولي الألباب لعلكم تتقون.
O you men of understanding! In the law of Qisas, retribution, there is saving of collective life to you. It means that if you think over it dispassionately, the reality shall come to the surface, that in the law of Qisas, retribution, there is a secret of individual as well as collective life, so that society can be saved from the dangers inherent in lawlessness. 2. Only the criminal, and not any other person in his place, shall receive punishment, nor shall any innocent person be prosecuted in place of a guilty person. Everybody shall bear his own burden. 6165.
ولا تكسب كل نفس إلا عليها ولا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى.
Every person draws the meat of his acts on none but himself, no bearer of burdens shall bear the burden of another. 3. The system of justice ought to be such that nobody might provide any benefit to the criminal, nor the recommendation of any person be accepted, nor the criminal be released through bribery, nor anybody could help him to escape punishment by any other means. Thus it is said, 248.
واتقوا يوما لا تجزي نفس عن نفس شيئا ولا يقبل منها شفاعة ولا يؤخذ منها عدل ولا هم ينصرون.
Then guard yourself against a day when one person shall not avail of another, nor shall the intercession be accepted for any person, nor any compensation be taken from somebody, nor shall anyone be helped against the law. This will happen when the Quranic system of justice is established in this world, and in the life hereafter. All affairs shall be settled subject to the law of requital. 4. The punishment of a criminal shall be proportionate to, and not exceed his crime. In this respect the principle is, 4240.
وجزاء سيئة سيئة مثلها.
The recompense of an evil is punishment like it. This has been explained further in 2194, 1027, 16126, 2260, 4040. 5. If there exists possibility of mending oneself, he can be forgiven. 4240.
فمن عفا وأصلح فأجره على الله.
But if a person forgives and makes reconciliation, his reward is due from Allah. 6. Before an offense is proved, the accused ought to be considered innocent. Thus during investigation he should not be treated with excess. To consider him guilty at this stage is against the Islamic code. In Surah An-Nur there is a tale about a woman during the time of Rasul. It is said that some evil monger brought about a false accusation against a virtuous woman and gave it publicity. The Quran took strong notice of it and said evil mongers had given publicity to a false accusation, but what had happened to you that you accepted it is true, without any investigation. When you had heard about it, you ought to have a favorable opinion about her, and your first reaction ought to have been, 2412.
هذا إفك مبين.
It is an obvious lie, this is an obvious lie, and 2416.
هذا بهتان عظيم.
This is most serious slander. From this the principle is deduced that unless a crime is proved against a person, he should not be considered guilty, that is, an accused should not be considered a criminal, but a favorable opinion should be formed about him until such time that he is proved guilty. 7. When a legislation is passed, none shall be held accountable for what he has done before its enactment. 423.
إلا ما قد سلف.
What has been done before, the enactment of a law, shall not be dealt with in accordance with this law. Also see, 2275, and 595. 8. Only a willful act shall be considered a crime. Thus it is said, 33:5.
عليكم جناح فيما أخطأتم به ولكن ما تعمدت قلوبكم.
There is no blame on you if you make a mistake. What counts is the intention of your hearts. That is, only an act committed intentionally is accountable. If someone commits an offense on account of ignorance and thereafter repents and amends his conduct, he can be excused for it. 654. But that does not mean that people may become careless about the law. Carelessness itself should be considered a separate offense. For example, the punishment for willful murder is death and the punishment for murder by mistake is ransom money, 492-93. It means that carelessness is also a crime but not as serious as a willful act. 9. If one is forcibly made to commit a crime, he shall not be considered a criminal, 16106. The use of force may be of varied types, however, this is not the place for giving details about them. 10. A small mistake by those who always avoid big crimes may be considered excusable. About mu'mineen it is said, 53:32.
الذين يجتنبون كبائر الإثم والفواحش إلا اللمم.
These are the people who avoid major crimes, though they may fall into small slips. 11. Anybody who puts another on the wrong path, he becomes a partner in crime. About such people it is said, 16:25.
ليحملوا أوزارهم كاملة يوم القيامة ومن أوزار الذين يضلونهم بغير علم ألا ساء ما يزرون.
Let them bear on the day of judgment their own burden in full and also, something, of the burdens of those without knowledge, whom they misled. Alas! How grievous are the burdens they will bear! Likewise is the one who commits a crime and throws it on another, he commits a double crime, for 112.
ومن يكسب خطيئة أو إثما ثم يرمي به بريئا فقد احتمل بهتانا وإثما مبينا.
And if anyone commits a mistake or a crime himself and then foists it on to the innocent, he carries, on himself, both, the burden of a calumny and a flagrant sin. 12. While declaring a judgment, the circumstances, upbringing, mentality and psychological condition of the criminal must be kept in mind. That is why the punishment, for a slave woman who commits adultery, zina, is laid down as half of that for a free woman, 425, and double for the consorts of the Rasul, 33:30. It should be clearly understood that this commandment pertains to that period of Arab history when slavery was still rampant. Since the Quran closed the door of slavery, the question of the captive women, or of the consorts of Rasul does not arise. However, principles can be deduced from such verses which could be applied to present-day society. 13. Remove evil by doing good. It means to create such an atmosphere in society that people shall avoid crime automatically. 28:54, 23:96, 11:114.
إن الحسنات يذهبن السيئات.
Is a universal principle of the Quran. It means that bad deeds ought to be countervailed by doing good. This principle serves as a means to bring about a pleasant and comprehensive resolution. Thus, while declaring punishment for a crime, the prevailing conditions in the society ought to be kept in mind. 14. The object of justice is not only to punish the offenders but also to compensate the loss of the oppressed. In this connection, the example of the crime of murder as laid down in the Quran can be presented. The one who is murdered leaves this world, but the compensation for the loss that his heirs suffer is also necessary. Thus it is said, 17:33.
ومن قتل مظلوما فقد جعلنا لوليه سلطانا.
If anyone is slain wrongfully, we have given his heirs the right to demand, qisas, or to forgive. From this example you can draw a principle which can be applied to other occurrences like this. As far as the compensation of the loss of the oppressed is concerned, the oppressed shall be the plaintiff and the government shall be the defendant in such a case. Thus it shall be incumbent upon the government to protect the life, property, honor of all who live within its territory. Moreover, except for the loss suffered by a person on account of his own neglect or carelessness, its compensation shall lie on the government, and this loss includes not only life and property but also mental torture, because the government guarantees to the people to provide for them an atmosphere wherein, 238.
فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون.
On them there shall be no fear nor shall they grieve. In fear the physical loss is included, and in grief, mental torture is included. 15. The government shall be answerable to the judiciary for each of its responsibilities, like other individuals. Even the Rasul, who was the first head of an Islamic state, was made to declare, 6:14.
قل إني أمرت أن أكون أول من أسلم. قل إني أخاف إن عصيت ربي عذاب يوم عظيم.
I am the first to submit to divine law, and if I disobey divine command, I indeed fear the penalty of the mighty day. Therefore none is exempt from this law, neither the government, nor its functionaries, nor even the head of state. 16. The Quranic philosophy concerning crime is as under. Every crime leaves an effect on the offender himself, as well, so that, to begin with, the offender inflicts injury on his own person, for 111.
ومن يكسب إثما فإنما يكسبه على نفسه.
If anybody earns a sin, he earns it against his own self. It means that the first effect of committing wrong is on the personality of the offender, and this effect cannot be erased by punishment from the court. The effect of some offenses is limited to the personality of the offender. It does not affect another person, e.g. the treachery of the eyes and evil intentions of the heart, 40:19. These offenses do not normally come under the jurisdiction of the courts of law, yet even such offenses which affect only the personality of the offender, for example addiction to narcotics, if declared as crimes by the law, shall come under the jurisdiction of the court. C. Only those offenses come under the jurisdiction of a court which the offender has actually committed. For example, if one intends to commit theft but does not find an opportunity to do it, although the effect of his intention shall be imprinted on his own self, he shall not be considered as an offender in the eyes of the law. The Quran says that Allah's law of requital takes account of even the ideas that pass in your mind. It means that such a person shall not be an offender in the eyes of the law court, yet he shall be an offender according to Allah's law of requital. That is why the Quran lays stress on the reformation of human ideas and intentions. If the human intentions are rectified, the crimes cannot occur. Thus it is the duty of an Islamic state to give wide publicity to educate its citizens on the philosophy of crime, so that the individuals of the society begin to comprehend the eventual loss for wrongdoing and the violation of law. Verses 407-112 are an eye-opener and provide effective guidance for eradication of crimes from society. As a matter of fact, Iman on Allah's law of requital and the life hereafter, substantiated by reason and argument, is a great rectifying force. 17. In matters relating to punishment, it ought to be kept in mind that the punishments prescribed by the Holy Quran itself are the maximum punishments and were proposed according to the socio-economic conditions that prevailed during the days of its revelation. These punishments shall be ordered only under similar conditions. If the conditions change, an Islamic rule can make changes in them. An example of it is found in the Quran itself. The punishment for revolt against the Islamic rule is beheading, crucifixion, cutting off hands and feet, or banishment or detention, 533. The object of prescribing a number of punishments is that these should be enforced according to the prevalent conditions. These punishments are neither abrogated, nor can they be annulled, but these are conditional to the prevailing circumstances. On the other hand, the Islamic government itself shall determine punishments that have not been prescribed by the Quran. The Islamic government shall also decide as to which of the social laws can be included in the list of penal laws. Corporal punishment. The Holy Quran has prescribed corporal punishments for crimes. Imprisonment as punishment is nowhere mentioned in the Quran. For general immodest behavior on the part of women which leads towards adultery, the punishment prescribed is confinement to houses, 415.
واللاتي يأتين الفاحشة من نسائكم فاستشهدوا عليهن 4 منكم فإن شهدوا فأمسكوهن في البيوت حتى يتوفاهن الموت أو يجعل الله لهن سبيلا.
If any of your women are guilty of an immodesty, which can result in leading towards adultery, take the evidence of 4 reliable witnesses from amongst you against them, and if they testify, confine them to houses until death do claim them, or the law of Allah creates a situation which takes them away from such shameful acts, such as she gets married. Punishment for fornication is mentioned in 24:2, and punishment for making a false accusation in 24:4. Internment can also be imposed as a punishment in crimes relating to disorder and rebellion, as has been previously explained, 533-34. In Surah Azab, 33rd chapter of the Quran, a verse points towards banishment also. It starts with address to the Nabi, 33:59.
يا أيها النبي قل لأزواجك وبناتك ونساء المؤمنين يدنين عليهن من جلابيبهن ذلك أدنى أن يعرفن فلا يؤذين وكان الله غفورا رحيما.
O Nabi, Tell your wives and daughters and the believing women that they should cast a loose outer garment over their persons when going out. 24:31. It is necessary for their recognition as honorable women, so that no vulgar people may molest them. According to the divine law, this shall serve as a means of their protection as well as training. 33:60-61.
لئن لم ينته المنافقون والذين في قلوبهم مرض والمرجفون في المدينة لنغرينك بهم ثم لا يجاورونك فيها إلا قليلا ملعونين أينما ثقفوا أخذوا وقتلوا تقتيلا.
So, you be careful to this extent, but if after this, the hypocrites, whose hearts are diseased with wickedness and those who stir up sedition in the city desist not, then force shall have to be used against them, thus after a while they shall not be able to stay amongst you. They shall be deprived of all the privileges they received, on account of their being the citizens of an Islamic state. In case they still persist in their rebellion, they shall be prosecuted and put to death. In the above passage the words
ثم لا يجاورونك فيها إلا قليلا
points to the possibility of their banishment. Testimony, evidence. 1. In evidence be just. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, 5th chapter of the Quran, it is said, 5:8.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط.
O you who believe! Stand out firmly as witnesses to maintain and perpetuate justice, and do not do it for personal gain but merely for the sake of Allah. The singularity of believers has been described as 70:33.
والذين هم بشهاداتهم قائمون.
Those who stand firm in their testimonies. 2. Always come forward with just narration even if it goes against you or your parents or other relatives. In your testimony do not differentiate between the rich and the poor, nor should your sentiments be allowed to prevail upon you. Never speak in a crooked way. Do not evade standing as a witness. Stand not as a witness for the plaintiff or for the respondent, but do so for Allah alone. 135.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما فلا تتبعوا الهوى أن تعدلوا وإن تلووا أو تعرضوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا.
In order to establish a system in which you can receive the pleasant things of the present, as well as of the future, the basic condition is that you should become the custodians of justice in this world. 5:8. And for justice the basic element is truthful evidence. Therefore stand out firmly for justice as witnesses for Allah, even as against yourself, or your parents, or your kins, and whether it be against rich or poor, do not become their well-wishers at the cost of leaving the course of truth, for Allah can best look after them. Follow not the behest of your passions lest you swerve. Nor say anything deceitful or refuse to present your testimony, verily Allah is well acquainted with what you do, even with your passions and inclinations. 3. Do not conceal testimony. 283.
ولا تكتموا الشهادة.
And do not intermix truth with falsehood in your evidence. 242.
ولا تلبسوا الحق بالباطل.
Nor present untrue, false, testimony. The singularity of the believers has thus been stated. 25:72.
والذين لا يشهدون الزور.
They never present false, untrue, testimony. 4. You should present your testimony only on matters that you personally know Allah ordains. 17:36.
إن السمع والبصر والفؤاد كل أولئك كان عنه مسؤولا.
And pursue not that of which you have no personal knowledge, for every act of hearing, or of seeing or of feeling in your mind, will be questioned into. It means that you reach conclusions through personal inquiry by the use of your sense and mind. If any link of this chain is broken, your inquiry shall remain defective. This is a great responsibility that Allah has laid upon you. Allah has endowed you with discretion and choice, so that you can choose between right and wrong. You are not a helpless machine, and with this, He has provided you with means to investigate, and not to use such means as to avoid your responsibility. 5. Witnesses should not refuse to attend when called for. 282. On the other hand, stress has been enjoined upon. 282.
ولا يأبى الشهداء إذا ما دعوا. ولا يضر كاتب ولا شهيد.
Let neither scribe nor witness be harmed. 6. If the testimony of certain witnesses is doubtful, the court can call other witnesses. 5:107-108.
فإن عثر على أنهما استحقا إثما فآخران يقومان مقامهما من الذين استحق عليهم الأوليان فيقسمان بالله لشهادتنا أحق من شهادتهما وما اعتدينا إنا إذا لمن الظالمين ذلك أدنى أن يأتوا بالشهادة على وجهها أو يخافوا أن ترد أيمان بعد أيمانهم واتقوا الله واسمعوا والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين.
If it is found that the witnesses are guilty of perjury, let two others, from the party against which the wrong evidence has been presented, stand forth in their places and swear by Allah that their testimony is truer than those who appeared earlier and that they will not exceed beyond the truth, and if they do so they shall become guilty. In the divine law, testimony over and above the first testimony is allowed because therein lies the possibility of witnesses giving true evidence for fear of contradiction, in which case they shall be considered as criminals and this shall bring them a bad name in society. Now it is necessary for you, therefore, to remain conscious of the divine law and listen carefully, that if you leave the right path and take up the wrong instead, it would never lead you to your destination. 7. Witnesses ought to be from amongst your own people except where it is not possible to do so. 5:106.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا شهادة بينكم إذا حضر أحدكم الموت حين الوصية اثنين ذوى عدل منكم أو آخران من غيركم إن أنتم ضربتم في الأرض فأصابتكم مصيبة الموت تحبسونهما من بعد الصلاة فيقسمان بالله إن أرتبتم لا نشتري به ثمنا ولو كان ذا قربى ولا نكتم شهادة الله إنا إذا لمن الآثمين.
O you who believe! When death approaches any of you, take witnesses amongst yourselves while making a will, because making a will has been made incumbent upon you. 2:180. Take two just men as witnesses of your own brotherhood, or others from outside if you are journeying through the land, or where your own people are not available, and the probability of death befalls you. Then at the time when their testimony is needed, if you doubt their truth, let your judges detain them both, after prayers, in the mosque, and let them both swear by Allah we wish not in this for any worldly gain, even though our beneficiary be our near relatives, and that we shall hide not the true evidence. If we do that, then the sin will be upon us, that is, we shall be considered as offenders. 8. In transacting financial matters, take two male witnesses, and if two male witnesses are not available, take one male and two females. The Holy Quran has even given the bylaws in this respect to the minutest details for the reason that it gives utmost importance that matters of financial transactions should be clear and firm. We, therefore, consider it necessary to append below complete guidance given by the Quran in this regard. 282.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا تداينتم بدين إلى أجل مسمى فاكتبوه وليكتب بينكم كاتب بالعدل ولا يأب كاتب أن يكتب كما علمه الله فليكتب وليملل الذي عليه الحق وليتق الله ربه ولا يبخس منه شيئا فإن كان الذي عليه الحق سفيها أو ضعيفا أو لا يستطيع أن يمل هو فليملل وليه بالعدل واستشهدوا شهيدين من رجالكم فإن لم يكونا رجلين فرجل وامرأتان ممن ترضون من الشهداء أن تضل إحداهما فتذكر إحداهما الأخرى ولا يأبى الشهداء إذا ما دعوا ولا تسأموا أن تكتبوه صغيرا أو كبيرا إلى أجله ذلكم أقسط عند الله وأقوم للشهادة وأدنى ألا ترتبوا إلا أن تكون تجارة حاضرة تديرونها بينكم فليس عليكم جناح ألا تكتبوها وأشهدوا إذا تبايعتم ولا يضر كاتب ولا شهيد وإن تفعلوا فإنه فسوق بكم واتقوا الله ويعلمكم الله والله بكل شيء عليم.
O you who believe! When you borrow money for a fixed period, reduce the agreement to writing. Let a scribe write down this mutual transaction faithfully. Let the scribe not refuse to write, as Allah has given him the knowledge, but he should keep the divine law before him and not make any alterations in it, nothing more or less. If the one who takes the loan is mentally deficient or weak or is unable himself to dictate, let his guardian dictate faithfully, and take two witnesses out of your own men, and if there are not two men, then a man and two women, such as both parties agree to the purpose behind taking two women in place of one man, so that if one of them errs or is confused, the other can remind her. The witnesses should not refuse when they are called on, for evidence. Disdain not to reduce to writing your contract whether it be small or big, it is closer to the demands of justice in the sight of divine laws. This is the best method to make the testimony firm and free of any doubts among yourselves. But if it be a transaction which you carry out on the spot among yourselves, which you do normally, there is no blame on you if you reduce it not to writing, but even then take witnesses whenever you make such a deal, and let neither scribe nor witness suffer harm. If you do such harm, it would be tantamount to flouting the divine law. So guard Allah's law well. for it is He who makes these laws known to you. And Allah is well acquainted with all things.
وإن كنتم على سفر ولم تجدوا كاتبا فرهان مقبوضة فإن أمن بعضكم بعضا فليؤدي الذي أؤتمن أمانته وليتق الله ربه ولا تكتموا الشهادة ومن يكتمها فإنه آثم قلبه والله بما تعملون عليم.
And after this it is said, 2-283, if you are on a journey and cannot find a scribe, a pledge with possession may serve the purpose. And if one of you deposits a thing on trust with another, let the trustee, faithfully, discharge his trust and thus abide by the law of the one who is his sustainer. Conceal not evidence, for whoever conceals it, his heart gets tainted with sin. Even if other people do not know of it and he continues to be a reliable person among others, his self does get injury and its nurturing forces do diminish and get weakened, because nothing can remain hidden from Allah's law of requital. As far as the question of two women in lieu of a man is concerned, the Quran itself has explained the reason, that is, if one woman forgets or is confused, the other shall remind her. This clarifies 2 points. Firstly, that in that period the women were such, due to illiteracy, that they were not able to describe their own case properly, 43:18, and that it was seldom that a chance arose for them to take part in the collective affairs. It was not unexpected of them to get confused before a court of law. Secondly, the need for a second woman arose only when the first one got confused and forgot. If the first woman remained free of confusion and forgetfulness, the second woman could neither interfere nor her testimony was needed. This fully explains that, in fact, two women are not appearing as separate witnesses, one would suffice provided she does not suffer confusion in the court. It makes clear that women are not considered unreliable as against men on the basis of being women. It is only the special conditions that are kept in view. When such conditions remain no more, the testimony of one man and one woman shall be considered equally trustworthy. 9. As explained in item 7, at least 2 witnesses are required while making a will, 5-106. 10. For acts of immodesty, leading towards adultery or fornication, at least 4 witnesses are required, 4:15.
واللاتي يأتين الفاحشة من نسائكم فاستشهدوا عليهن 4 منكم.
Remember, this testimony is for cases of general shameless acts, leading towards adultery, and not for adultery itself. 11. In cases of calumny against chaste woman, at least 4 witnesses are required, 24:4.
والذين يرمون المحصنات ثم لم يأتوا ب4 شهداء فاجلدوهم 80 جلدة ولا تقبلوا لهم شهادة أبدا وأولئك هم الفاسقون.
And those who make an accusation against chaste women and provide not 4 witnesses to support their accusation, scourge them 80 times and reject their evidence ever after, for such men are wicked transgressors. Also deprive them of such privileges that are available to the citizens of an Islamic state, and if they still continue with their nefarious designs inflict upon them a more grievous penalty, 24:23, because these people go astray leaving the right path. But if the charge of adultery is against one's own wife and other witnesses are not available, it is sufficient to take an oath. Thus it is said, 24:6-9.
والذين يرمون أزواجهم ولم يكن لهم شهداء إلا أنفسهم فشهادة أحدهم 4 شهادات بالله إنه لمن الصادقين والخامسة أن لعنة الله عليه إن كان من الكاذبين ويدرأ عنها العذاب أن تشهد 4 شهادات بالله إنه لمن الكاذبين والخامسة أن غضب الله عليها إن كان من الصادقين.
And for those who raise a charge of adultery against their spouses and have, in support, no evidence but their own, the solitary evidence of the husband, can be received, if he bears witness 4 times, with an oath, by Allah that he is solemnly telling the truth. And the 5th oath should be, that he solemnly invokes the curse of Allah on himself if he tells a lie. But it would avert the punishment from the wife, if she bears witness 4 times, with an oath, by Allah that, her husband, is telling a lie. Again the 5th oath should be that she solemnly invokes the imprecation of Allah on herself if her accuser is telling the truth. With this she shall be acquitted. 12. 2 witnesses for the last stage of divorce, 65:2.
فإذا بلغن أجلهن فأمسكوهن بمعروف أو فارقوهن بمعروف وأشهدوا ذوي عدل منكم وأقيموا الشهادة لله.
When they complete their iddat, term of counting, it shall be discussed in detail under Injunction 12 of the family laws, either take them back on equitable terms or part from them on equitable terms and take for witness 2 persons from among you, endued with justice who stand as witnesses to this last stage of divorce, as a duty towards Allah. The detailed injunctions about divorce shall be described later on. The issue described here is regarding evidence. 13. Circumstantial evidence. Testimony can be deduced from circumstantial evidence, like it was done in the accusation against Joseph. Here the witness was not an eyewitness, but he argued, 12:27-28.
وإن كان قميصه قد من دبر فكذبت وهو من الصادقين فلما رأى قميصه قد من دبر قال إنه من كيدكن إن كيدكن عظيم.
If it be that his shirt is rent from the front, then her tale is true and he is a liar, but if it be that his shirt is torn from the back, then she is the liar and he is telling the truth. So when he saw his shirt torn at the back, her husband said, Behold, it is the guile of you women, how deep are your treacheries and how dangerous are your deceptions. It should be understood clearly that the Quran has described it only as an incident.